In this episode of SBJ I Factor, we speak with Stacey Allaster, who was a 2011 SBJ game changer, and the longtime tennis executive speaks about her personal and professional journey, lessons learned along the way, and what's next for her. All that on SBJ I Factor. Well, veteran sports business executive Stacey Allaster, one of the top female executives in all of sports. Stacey, you were a game changer in 2011. You have served as the CEO of the WTA. Now you are the chief executive running pro tennis at the USTA. A great, well-respected career. Good to see you.
It's so great to see you as well. God, we're pretty lucky in our industry. You know, it's been challenging, but we have these moments, right, to create magic, and it's been fun along this journey to create magic and give back to such great fans and to see you.
Well, you know, you and I have known each other for a while. You talk about your journey. I want to start with your journey because you grew up in Canada, and tell me about your youth and kind of how you grew up and how that influenced or really guided your path.
Sure. So I to give context for everyone, I grew up on the U.S.-Canada border in a tiny little town near Niagara Falls. So that'll give us reference. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've been waiting to grow up. I'm still that short little kid that grew up in Canada. And I had that gift of tenacity, perseverance, and that I could do anything despite my size. So I played a lot of sports. I was good at everything, great at nothing. And there was a Tennis Canada program, and they were trying to get more kids to play. And I was chosen from my school. I got a racket. I got 6 weeks of lessons and a membership at the community tennis club when I was 13 years old. And that was an amazing gift to me because it gave me everything in my professional life that I had no idea what was going to happen. Single mom, we didn't have much. She sacrificed everything for us. I never felt that I didn't have anything, but I worked really hard and was quite entrepreneurial so that I could play tennis and could play sports.
Any siblings?
I have one sister and some stepsisters and a stepsister and some stepbrothers. So definitely a blended family.
And so you're going through this, you're 13 or 14, you're playing tennis, you're into sports, obviously. So obviously you're competitive. Did you have any career aspirations of being in sport?
None. No, at that time, you know, you're just going along playing sport. Played soccer. I was a skier. And then I got introduced to tennis. And I loved it from day one. And I just spent the whole summer at the courts. And I befriended the club pro, and he took care of me and gave me jobs. You know, my first job was cleaning the red clay courts at the club, and he didn't like teaching the juniors, so I started teaching. I got certified, and before you knew it, I was running the club. Thanks to him. And I read a book, What They Don't Teach You at the Harvard Business School by Mark McCormick, and that was the light bulb moment.
Okay.
Because while I was doing, you know, tennis, it was everything that is the foundation of business. To learn to communicate with people, got to organize people to follow. And I was running the junior program with 120 kids, had to market it, had to get sponsors, all of those things. And I read Mark's book. And that was the course that really set me on the journey. And I thought when I was in college that I was going to be an agent. Thank God that never happened.
Got it. Yep.
And that didn't work out, so I ended up on the event operations side and the marketing side.
Because you went to, if I'm correct, you went to Tennis Canada, right? And started in.
That's right.
Okay, so you were doing events, and at that time, how many events did Tennis Canada operate and run?
We operated the Canadian Open.
Yep.
And it was small country, so just a handful of pro circuit events. I tried to get into Tennis Canada in 1991. They turned me down 3 times.
Okay, perseverance though.
Perseverance.
Just
kept
you're
knocking.
Persistent.
You know, get knocked down, get back up. I was that kid. I was that underdog, And I just was relentless. I would not give up. And the president of Tennis Canada said, I'll give you a chance. Here's 3 months. Come in. I will do whatever you need me to do. And I got positioned with John Beddington, who was running the Open, and he was in charge of revenue generation. And I worked alongside of John, and within 5 years, I had John's job.
Yeah, and so talk about the early learnings and the lessons in terms of joining an event, joining a business in sports.
Yes.
You talked about sales, you talked about marketing. What was eye-opening?
Well, I really learned from John many of those things that were in the book, relationships. And John was a consummate relationship builder in the industry, and to always be looking external at the marketplace. What's happening in the market? What do brands need? What do they need from sponsors? And just that sort of relentless, tenacious, go after it. A no means yes, and 100 no's. Ultimately, you're ultimately going to get a yes. So I just learned a lot from John on how to sell, and built then by default, because at the time we were selling really, the basics of sponsorship, engagement, promotion, and I just found a way to build that into the sponsorships and begin to go from a tennis event to more of an entertainment event.
Which we saw a lot in sports. And during this time, Stacey, of course, the more you rose up the ladder, the more responsibility you got, but also the more people you had to manage. What were some early lessons in management?
So, I was this hard driving
Right.
individual, right? Trying to always prove that I, belonged. And when you're a woman in that age, this is early 90s. And this is a kid with limited tennis experience, no connection with the sport industry. And I'm now, overseeing the Canadian Open. I was driven to exceed results. And that hard driving transactional leadership worked well. It worked well to deliver the results. And if anyone knows me, I've got the biggest heart in the world. I am like the softest person in the world. But with that hard driving all the time, I don't think my staff understood how much I cared about them. It was always get the results, and never took the time to really celebrate the deal. We got to move on to the next one. Yesterday's deal is over, and what's next, and where's the next growth coming from? So I learned earlier on that an empathetic leader and being vulnerable to show it was necessary, alongside of that hard driving growth mindset that I had.
And did that come naturally, or did that just come over time, or over coaching even?
Well, it wasn't natural. I think for me, I got to flex that empathy muscle.
Yeah.
Because my energy level is off the charts. It is off the charts, and the passion. And I'm so driven for my sport to excel, because it has given me everything. It is incredibly personal to me for tennis to grow, because it ultimately changes people's lives. It changed my life. And so I definitely work on it. It was one of those classical, I probably was about 32-ish.
Right.
A 360. And I didn't score well on the empathy. And it was a shocker. I took it incredibly personal. So I'm a firm believer in some of those personality styles that are out, tests that are out there. And the one that I've learned the most from is something called the Berkman.
Yeah. Okay.
And I did that when I came to the USTA. And that was just, we're wired how we are. I've been given these amazing genes from an Irish and a Scottish grandmother. And that combination is fierce.
Yeah, I bet.
Yes.
But it sounds like you've been able to even take that, I would say, advice, counsel, and morph your leadership style now, because I know you've been a mentor to so many young men and women. When you see a leadership style that maybe reminds you of maybe you at a younger age, do you say something?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can see it, right?
Yeah.
And we go on this leadership journey. And I finally feel like I'm in my prime. But you think about it, you want to think of it like a forest. You plant the seeds, they nurture a little bit. Then the young saplings come along. Then the strong young tree is starting to really grow and grow and grow, and probably doesn't take its time to feel the shade and everything around it. And I think now, when you think about when you get to this stage, Dave, I don't know if it's the same for you. What's it all about?
Oh, yeah.
For me, what's the purpose, right? And one of the key things for me is helping this next generation of leader, female and male, take our sport to the next generation. I'm not the future of professional tennis, but there's a whole host coming behind me. And if I can share with them where I took my missteps and how I could have optimized better leadership at a younger and earlier age, then I think I'm doing my job as a leader. And I spent a lot of time in that space.
So before I ask you then how you hire, answer me this then, Stacey. When you see a younger person, male, female, who you're, working with, what's an attribute that you see in them that, lights that a light bulb? Oh, they have a future leader. What is an attribute in a future leader that you admire?
I love the growth mindset.
The growth mindset. Okay.
Yeah. Like anything's possible.
Got it.
And irrespective of the challenge, there's always a way.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of pros and cons to the other pathways, other strategies. There is always a way. Financial obviously also comes into it, but those that just they're going to sit down, they're going to figure it out. They're going to mobilize subject matter experts to help them figure it out, to go smashing through those roadblocks. And that's critically important for me when I'm looking to work with someone. And 75% of leaders fail due to their lack of emotional intelligence. And it is just natural on this leadership journey. You haven't had the experience. You may not have had that self-reflection where someone has told you, where you've taken these personality traits and you went, right. Oh yeah. So those two things are really important when I see someone not seeing the big picture.
And a real quick follow-up, can you spot those pretty quickly, either EI or that attribute of being able to get things done?
I can.
Yeah.
I think I have a pretty good read of people, and you can feel it. You can feel it in their energy.
And most people, when you hire, have been vetted, have come to you at the end. You've got a pool of candidates. Outside of the two attributes you just mentioned, what else do you look for in a hire? What do you look for in an applicant?
Character.
Character. Yeah.
We hire on competency and commitment, and competency we can teach. Character, their values, their ethics, and their integrity. And leave the ego at the door, but bring it inside the door to edge good things out.
Interesting.
And those that have that service mentality, that they want to serve others. When I've been in not-for-profits, we are in servant leadership day in, day out. But I have a feeling even if I had been in for-profit, you're in a servant role to serve your customers. And it's sort of character. And I think those are fundamental to me.
How do you hold people accountable?
Well, obviously my job is to sort of set that vision, the strategy, the goals, recruit and retain the best talent that we can, invest in them. And sometimes you don't have the financial resource, but you invest your time in them and empower them, and then let them go. And as you're seeing where they're taking us, and maybe they're deviating a little bit, it's that coaching session. And so I will, and I have learned this, ask them the questions rather than sort of telling them what to do. saying, because nobody likes negative feedback. We don't
Right.
respond well to negative feedback. But I've had this observation. What do you think? In my experience, I've done it this way. What do you think of that? To then hopefully get them to see, and look, depending upon the degree of maybe where we've got to get course corrected, sometimes you have to be very direct. And it is important to give it as soon as possible, let you see it. Don't let it linger, don't let it fester. And I really think in that positive, and if they trust me, I think my team trusts me, and I'm there for them. I'm accessible anytime. I'm humble. I'm vulnerable. They see my weaknesses. I have nothing left to prove now. My job is to help them with their professional and actually their personal goals. And in doing that, I know I'll get the best out of them for the USTA.
Yeah, I know whenever you and I have sat down and talked about this, I've always appreciated your openness and transparency and honesty. And so let's flip it a little bit. Where do you think, is there a failure you've learned from the most? Or I guess somebody asked me about my best failure. Anything that strikes you?
Well, I think for me, and it's well documented, was the ending of my career at the WTA. And, what I have learned on this journey is that probably the number one thing we need to do as leaders is to manage our energy. And I failed at that miserably. I was running around the world, trying to build the WTA on a shoestring budget. First mistake was trying to do too much on my own. And I did that for fiscal responsibility. But at the end of the day, it actually, broke me, because when David Shoemaker left, to go to NBA China, it was hard for me to replace him. He's impossible to replace. He's so darn good.
Yes.
But I didn't have that right hand. And we were in Asia and everybody wanted to see, the title. And I just ultimately ran myself into the ground. And much of it, in addition just to the physical, was that inner, I've got to prove everyone that a woman with 2 kids can be the CEO, and a very successful CEO of the WTA. I didn't want let anyone down. This is Billy's organization, and we are boxing above our belt weight each and every day in women's sport. Trying to belong in the with the male sports. So I got burnt out. I was a classical professional mom who just ran herself to the end. And the bottom line is, and this is what, for me anyway, I put myself last. I put the work first at that stage. I put the family first, and Stacey was last. And you got to reverse it. Stacey has to be first, get rid of the guilt, and take care of the mind, body, and soul. And then I would have been able to handle those pressures, whether they were self-imposed or those that just come with the stressors of the job.
Could you have done that in the role that you had and the pressures that you faced? Like, if you knew then what you know now,
Yes.
how would you have acted differently? Would you have taken less time on the road? Would you have taken care of yourself differently?
Absolutely. So number one was, the first mistake was, when you think back to this chain of link, no matter how good I was and how invincible I feel, I needed a strong right hand.
Yeah.
And I should have advocated stronger to the board that I needed it. And I tried a variety of different scenarios. They didn't materialize. So that was the first. Second was absolutely dial back the road trips. Before we started, you said, "Are you on the road?" I'm like, no, it's the gift. If anything, the pandemic certainly has helped to manage this global business, where I don't need to be on the road as much. It does not replace the face-to-face, in particular in certain cultures, when the face-to-face is important. And I just would have taken care of myself better. I know what I need. It's sleep. And you just can't work from 5 to midnight for 6, 7 years in a row. It doesn't work.
No.
Even the Energizer Bunny runs out of energy, and I needed more time to recharge.
But you see that a lot in the sports business. You see it in every business, but I know
Every
you and I both know colleagues. But to your point, you face a lot of pressure, even on, like you said, proving that a mother, proving that a working mother could be a CEO in the sports business, where there aren't many of women in that role.
No. And I felt that weight. I took it on very, very personally. I didn't want to let myself down. I didn't want to let the people who believed in me. And I certainly didn't want to let other female leaders who were aspiring to the C-suite to let them down. And, that is another key learning. Stacey, you can't take it all on.
Yeah.
Just do your best and manage that, whether you call it mindfulness, but that mind, body, and soul is super critical for energy management. And health includes your mental health. And that wasn't something we talk about very much in sport, right?
No.
Tough it out. Come on, let's go.
And to your point, I want to just, before we move on and finish up, Stacey, I did want to ask, so, because I know a lot of women who look at you as their mentor, their kind of North Star, and if they aspire to be in that C-suite, and you're telling them some advice or offering them some counsel on their roadmap, outside of taking care of themselves, getting sleep, being cognizant of that, any other advice?
This is not a dress rehearsal. And we're not defined by our jobs or our professional accomplishments. Do not lose sight of your personal and your family goals, whatever they are, because those kids are only going to be little for a period of time. Everyone talks about it, right? And the personal sacrifices that we make, just be mindful of it and be managing. There's something that an Ontario a judge said to me, a mother of four, answer two questions. Should you go to that event? Should you take that business trip? If the answer is yes, the second question is, do you really need to be there? If you can't answer yes to both, then you have to sit back. And again, I think we now have a hybrid way of working that helps with the wear and tear of the physicality of traveling. I also think environments and demand from your workplace a hybrid and a flexible work environment for either spouse, so that you can have that flexibility for the pressures that you're still going to have at home. We're not that far along in society with, our male counterparts being 50-50 at the caring for the children. Just by default, still, and that probably, at least for me, is my own guilt, even though my husband was Mr. Mom and was a trailblazer unto himself, John, to help. But just make sure that you have the right work environment to optimize your skills. And yes, we're going to make a lot of sacrifices, but never let the glass ball drop. All those things are rolling around in the air. Can't drop our health. Be careful. Don't take it for granted.
Love it. As we maybe end on more of a lighter note now, how can you get away from it all? For Stacey Allaster, what are you reading or listening to, or a hobby that kind of takes your mind away from it all?
Well, I'm an introvert. And so day to day, I'm a professional extrovert.
Yes,
I can bring it. I can bring the energy.
Yep.
But I am zapped at the end of the day. And for me, I need alone time. I need some solitude and nature. I know that if it's a walk, and I love the beach, I love the forest, that will dial me right down very, very, very quickly. So I'm very in tune to that. I quite like reading inspirational stories, autobiographies. So I know you're going to be surprised at this one. I'm reading Billie Jean's autobiography, All In.
All In, yep.
Yep. And I finally, the pandemic introduced me to podcasts. So I'm dating myself, right? But I'm a good 18 months into podcasts. And I have a full range, but the ones I'm on the beach listening, Mind Valley, and he always has super cool entrepreneurs, business people. And HBR has something called the anxious achiever.
Huh.
Because I've always, had this sort of, geez, do I belong? I don't know if I belong, and dealt with this anxiety. So again, ways in which to manage the mental health and some of those self-doubt feelings that we have even today. And so those are a couple of my go-tos, and I love comedy. So anything that's going to make me laugh, I'm there.
Great stuff. I know that so many in the sports business suffer through that like imposter syndrome. So it's interesting you bring that up. But, let's end with this. First, answer me this question. The sports industry needs to do a better job of. And then my last question is, what's next for Stacey Allaster?
The sports industry needs to do a better job of investing in women's sport. 40% of professional athletes are female, and many of them hardly have a career. And we talk about the value of female athletes and the role models that they are for our youth. And I think there is this momentum, societal and brands, social media and influencers, that it's prime, and now streaming and platforms, so that women's sport can get some airtime with a different business model than an ROI and an ROO. And it's men in leadership positions that it's time to stop talking about how great female athletes are, and to actually double down and invest. And it's, we've been talking about 2011, I think was year one of Game Changer, right?
Yeah. 10 years.
With 2021.
Yeah.
And I thank you for your leadership, a decade of it. But my goal is that there should be no game changer. We should be having those conversations in the main SBJ. And that it's time. It is time, and the value's there. And so that's my passion and my ask. And it's time for all of us to stand up, to speak up, and be accountable. And let's go. Where we are today, what we've done in the past, let's just go forward. Let's go forward and find our way through it.
And then what's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, I'm 6 years. I had 6 US Opens. That's like, wow.
That's great. Yeah.
Crazy. And I am, despite the challenges, I'm re-energized after this year's 2021 US Open.
It's a great event. Congratulations. Yeah.
I'm privileged to work with incredibly talented individuals like Lou Shear and Danny Zausner. And again, I believe that I can make a difference with the leadership, particularly women in our industry. So I think I'm going to be here for a while. But as I go through it, I've got a really good compass. For me, it is about giving back, and it is about helping this next generation of leader, so that we do have more women at the decision-making table, in the C-suite, whether it be in my sport or in all sports. And that really is where I'm investing a lot of my energy and my time, alongside of the day job with pro tennis at the USTA.
Well, you've been that pioneer and that trailblazer and helped so many people in the sports business since I've known you for almost 2 decades. So we're counting on you to continue leading. Stacey Allaster was a game changer in 2011, continues to be a very important and influential voice in the sports business. Thanks so much for joining us on SBJ I Factor. We'll see you, I hope, in person, because we're long overdue down the road.
Very overdue.
Yes.
Thanks.
Good seeing you. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining SBJ I Factor today. Remember to subscribe to SBJ I Factor wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to our future episodes that will hit every 2 weeks.